Hello, today I have the lovely Jenny with me. Hi, Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi there. Yes, I'm Jennie Ensor and I live in North London with a large dog, a terrier called Hoagie, and my husband. And this is, I've just had published my fourth book, which is really exciting, a little nerve-wracking and completely exhausting, really, to be honest. Yeah, a little bit about myself. Yeah, I love dancing. I do Argentine tango, or I try to do it.
Wow.
I I love dance in general. I do a lot of yoga. I'm a bit highly strung. Have problem sleeping, so I've in the last few years I've been doing Ashtanga yoga, all sorts of yoga. So now I find it does help a little bit with sleeping, but it's really erratic. But it's great to feel that I'm getting older, but the body is not yet clapped out. So yes, and I read a lot. I love watching crime and dramas on TV. I watch a lot of Netflix. Sometimes, yeah, my husband is also a great TV watcher, so sometimes we argue about who's going to watch what. But that's okay, because I can then go and read a book or do some writing. So yeah, we've been married, yeah, how long? A long time. We've when was it? 2004 we got married. Yeah, and we mostly live quite harmoniously. We have a few big fights where we both tend to argue a lot and want to have the last word, which is not good. But over the years, I think having a relationship is quite a learn, sort of, you can learn from it, and I find more about myself, and I try to help my partner learn more about himself. And yeah, it can be very good. For a long time, I never thought I would get married, and I didn't think I'd have a long-term relationship, but it just happened, and I'm very glad it did. Sometimes I do want to just escape, go to my little island, or go on a massive long holiday, travel around the world. But yeah, mostly everything is fine. And I get to walk the dog. And yeah, I was saying before that, yeah, we've got this rather very mischievous dog, an Airedale Terrier, and it's the nature of the breed that they're very disobedient. But he's extremely appealing. Everyone when walking along, and everyone will come up and say what a wonderful dog and how sweet, and just like a big teddy bear, and not knowing that he's just jumped on about 5 other dogs, run away for an hour and not come back. It's yeah, he is, but we love him, but despite all the trouble.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
I always had the idea. When I had I had some problems at school, that my teachers got really irritated with me, and one or two got really upset with me being disobedient and not doing stuff I was told. Yeah, and my English teacher. But the only thing was, yeah, I loved her classes, and I was really inspired by the things that she did. And she made some really nice comment about one of my essays, and I always remembered it when she said, and it was really good. And for years I thought, oh, it'd be nice to be a writer, but I never had the confidence to do it. I always thought, well, no, how can I do it? But I did. I scribbled away. I was doing jobs I didn't like particularly for a while before I got into journalism. But before then, I would, even at work in my office, I would just start writing stuff and pretend I wasn't when anyone came in. So I knew, yeah, I gradually realized that I was just not happy doing, I did computer programming. I did quite a lot of just really boring jobs, and then I did a few more interesting things, but I just knew it wasn't like it wasn't really a long-term thing. And I was freelance journalist, and that was great. And I sort of, when I was doing freelance journalism, I was really into, I guess, environmental stuff and social issues, but I knew that it wasn't really, it was really exciting at times, and getting stuff on the front page of this newspaper was fantastic. But they never paid me, or not, they paid me for a while, and then the newspaper went bust. I had problems paying my rent. It just seemed to be, not that being an author is much better from that point of view, but at least it's something that you can, for me, I just find I've finally found what I just love to do. And even if I don't make any money out of it, which I don't really make it very much at all, it's still, yeah, it's something that I'm proud to be, and I can put on my passport, or I'm an author, and it's fantastic. So.
What made you take the plunge and actually start writing? Was it getting made? Was it the paper going bust, or was it something else that thought, now I'm going to do it? I'm going to sit down and write my book.
I traveled a lot when I was in my 20s. I spent a long time around in Asia and Australia, living in different countries, and I was also, finally I started working as a journalist. But then I miss England a lot, and people here, and the culture, TV, radio. And I thought, oh yeah, I've got to come back. And I really wanted to get a job in journalism, and I had this thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, John Pilger, but he's still going, I think. He was, when I arrived in Australia, he was quite well known for various exposés of the corruption actually in the police in Queensland. And there was other things. So I thought, oh yes, I would like to go and do this and be a sort of follow in his footsteps. So I did a journalism degree, and it was all going really well. But I just missed England. So when I came back, I applied to every single paper that I really wanted to work in. And I had one interview in that whole time. And I think it was just, they probably thought, A, like I was too old, and B, they probably thought I was really unsettled and restless, and I'd just come back to the country, so it just didn't happen. And I think, well, I probably wouldn't, I'm not great at, I don't think I'm very good at being very responsive to questions, probably better asking the questions, but I don't think I would be, I think probably print journalism would be the thing. Okay, and I have done interviews in print. I've recently, like in the UK, but I've done a few long articles, but it's nothing like writing a book and a novel. So that really isn't what I want to do. But it'd be nice to occasionally do columns and opinion pieces. I would love to do that.
And how long ago did your first book come out?
Yes. 2016, that was Blindside, and I'd tried to get, like people used to do in the old days, write to all the agents, writers and artists yearbook, went through all that, and got sort of like I had a couple of agents who seemed to be interested, but then they went to sleep somewhere and didn't come back to me. I just thought, oh well, sod them, I'm not going to be hung up about this. And so I went on to this thing called Autonomy, massive, is now sort of defunct. It was part of some sort of HarperCollins thing. But I met lots of authors online through that, and I got more confidence in my book. A previous incarnation of this book, Blindside, made it to the editor's desk, which was something like a really big thing, which it actually wasn't really a big thing, but for confidence. And then I met, I applied to this crowdfunding publisher called Unbound, and crowdfunding is like the last thing I would have ever imagined myself doing, because basically it's a completely different, at the time anyway, it was a very different way to do things. So I had to make I had a terrible cold. I had to make a video and try and tell people how wonderful my book was, which wasn't me at all. I and ask for money. Basically, it's a sort of between self-publishing and traditional publishing. a different sort of model, but I was no, it actually worked, and by some hook or by crook, with my friend, all my friends, one or two anyway, some of my friends are really supportive and really helpful. And I remember just I finally got to 100% funded, so that was a really good experience, and I had pretty good reviews for that book. It didn't sell very much, but I was really happy, just to get it out there.
If you were to pick one character out of your 4 books so far to take out for a meal, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
One character. Well, I would probably pick, yes, the main character in my latest book, Silenced, who is D.I. Callum Waverley. And I think it would be interesting, because I'm not one of those writers, I don't know every single thing about my characters. I know like the basics and what their spirit and the heart of them, and I don't know what their favorite color is and all that stuff. So there's so much I don't know about him, so I could learn. I would ask him all sorts, like, for juicy stories about what happens in the Met, stuff that no one would ever tell me, that is difficult for people to say, especially if they're still working there. I would like to ask, yes, well, I'll just say quickly that there's in Silence, there's a fair bit of police procedural bit, and there's he's equal, another DI in the murder squad, effectively, is promoted above him to acting DCI when their mutual boss has to go off sick, and this is he's called Pierce, acting DCI Pierce, and there's Callum completely hates him, and they've come loggerheads many times, and there's been, and basically to do with Pierce is racist and homophobic and extremely right-wing and has very objectionable beliefs in Callum's view, and there's a scene where they actually start fighting in a pub. So I would quite like to know what he would actually say and do to Pierce, if he could. Also, there's a bit I'd like to know. There is the theme of corruption and possible corruption, not to give the plot away, but in the Met and in the particular murder team. And Callum's boss, one level up, the detective superintendent, he has some quite dodgy sort of characteristics, and you sort of, like, as a reader, I hope you think, oh well, this is rather strange, or he could be a bit like a bad apple, but you don't quite know if he is or not. So I'd like to find out, does what he really thinks, really, about the big boss.
What's the most interesting thing you found doing research for your books?
Well, this novel is, the research I've done has really, and I can't say it's blown my mind, but it's been eye-opening. And I was just about, on the online launch I did last night that my publisher organized, I was looking through some of the about 10 urban slang dictionaries I've got, and trying to pick my favorite words. And I did write them down. And I did spend a lot of time looking at Top Boy on Netflix. It's like a gang, what do you call it? Like a gang drama, and it had a cult. Well, it probably still does. Has a cult following, set in London. And there's this guy Sully, and there's a phrase. There's I was looking through this. This dictionary. I'll find it in a minute. But I guess that one of the things is doing just looking at some of the etiquette for doing drug deals, and there's about 20. I was looking online because that is a lot. So there's so much about gang culture, which I just hadn't a clue about, and I gradually got to learn some of the slang and just some of the stuff that they do, cultural type stuff, and some of the, some of it, like even the gang signs, but which I won't try and do. And I was talking to this guy who was white guy, and you wouldn't think, looking at him, you wouldn't think, oh no, but everything he said was in this gang sort of American urban slang, and he came over and he was doing all these signs, which I just didn't know what he was on about half the time. But I mean, I was talking to, but he was recently another guy who was recently the leader of an East London gang, and he was saying things like, at one time my gang name was the Skull Boys, and then I changed it to the Skull Crew, and he said, no, you can't call it the Skull Crew, it's just Skull Crew on its own. And then he said, oh, you've got to have more girls in the gang, because you do have girls that are very much involved, but they're more unofficial and so on. And he was just saying about this, the sort of deals that he would do, where you'd have two cars pull up facing opposite directions, and they would do the deal through the window. And I was just asking a lot of detail about what weapons they would have in the car. And in my story, I've got a girl who carries in her bag, she has a large bag, and she carries the knife, his knife, and another time on the deal she carries his gun. So it's like, what would be realistic? And I mean, and all sorts of stuff, like at one time the deals used to be, a lot of them say out that's by taxi or something, and they wouldn't, and they would use like minicab drivers and unlicensed drivers who couldn't, and also if they were picked up by the police, there would be more than one person in the car, so that it would be hard for the police to say these drugs belong to one person, so for actually prosecuting it would be hard. And all sorts of, I'm not very good at just instantly remembering things, but there were so many quite startling things, and to do with the county line side, which I found fascinating. And all the slang words, I remember asking, just slang words for this and that, and what I asked, by the end of this novel, I had all these, several contacts I could ask in detail about gang crime and how it worked. Because I use a few in my book, and that was one of the interesting things, because there's like waste man and was and I don't so many, and chat and shit. I love to say that in an argument to my husband, but it does sound so funny for me. Here we go. Hang on, got it now. Yeah, Matrix. I love that because there's the Met Police have a gang member matrix, a gang database of all the members. Like there's a fact, and there's always controversy about it, and people saying that there shouldn't be so many people on it, and mostly black men, and for a start. So, and just they now use the word matrixed to mean being put on this database. So just small things like that, and all the words for like stabbing. There's so many, like to be stabbed. There's so many, like to be. I've got here ching or chef dart. It's very interesting. The world I had no insight at all into before.
No. Fixie. Move your butt.
Getting restless.
Yeah, we've got budgies and they're fluttering and they're scaring her, I think. Do you hide secret jokes or messages in your books that only a few people would understand?
Oh, no. Although you could say that possibly there's one or two more unusual slang words that I think with Google and so on that people can just look them up. It's not going to be a big deal. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and some people it's silly things like song lyrics or music artists and stuff, but yeah, it does sound like fun when people do it.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
What's been the most fun scene you've written out of all your books?
Well, fun to write, or do you think fun to read?
Either. I won't restrict you too much.
Well, okay, I can say for sure the most fun to write. Yeah, I didn't finish, like the list of my books as before. So after Blindside, there was one called The Girl in His Eyes, very dark, like a psychological suspense story, family drama. After that, I wrote, I think it was partly to have a relief contrast from the very dark stuff. I wrote Not Having It All, and that is completely mad in many ways. And it was me experimenting with different types of humor, and I guess, and some people have called it like a satire, but it's actually all sorts of humor. It's absolutely crazy, and not surprisingly, not many people bought it, but I had the most fun time writing it. And there's a woman, my main character is a scientist called Beatrice, who's torn between family and career. She has a very troublesome daughter, 5-year-old daughter, a really badly behaved dog, I don't know where that comes from, and a very difficult husband. The difficult husband is a corporate high-flying exec type person who goes to America and is always being called away on these long business trips. So she has to cope with her career. She's a research scientist and she's doing research on the brains of phobics. And that involves experiments with MRI scanner, and she frightens, well, in this story, she frightens them with things like snakes and spiders in the scanning tube. And that was so much fun to invent all this science. And I actually, because I am a former scientist, in that I did a degree in physics way back, I've never used it. So, but I love reading about brain, like any sorts of science, and especially anything to do with the brain and how it works. And so she's doing all these MRI type experiments. And actually there was writing about one of the experiments she's doing, and she's completely stressed at this stage because her husband's disappeared on this corporate trip, and the husband is convinced that she's having an affair with her best friend, like a lesbian affair. And so she's got to cope with him. She's actually on the verge of making a major discovery in her field with these phobics, and to do with this part, and I invented this part of the brain. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I made up this part of the brain called the BOLF that she discovers, and it's like an acronym. It actually stands for something, and I tried to make it as rigorous as I can, and it's also comedy, which is really hard. So I had this scene where she has her PhD students who volunteer to actually go into the tube and be experimented on, and to be subjected to these really horrible film clips of like people's eyes being cut out, you know, that famous film, someone's, whatever, all sorts of nasty film clips. But then there's a problem with one of the volunteers, and she has to actually go into the tube herself. Then there's she gets this massive great spider with I did a research for that, and it has sort of like white-tipped, horrible furry legs, and that's one of the situations that the spider goes into the tube. And then she has one of the volunteers actually has like a major panic attack. But it's supposedly been peer, you know, they have to authorize the experiments and have like a committee decide what's going to happen. And that was one of the scenes that was incredibly fun to write. And there was another involving Kurt, where he has an iPhone incident. He gets he's a rather obsessive, but he has a really lovable side, but he's obsessive and he's paranoid, and he's in this hotel room in Turkey, doesn't know what's going on, and he so he starts to imagine all sorts of things. He comes home, he believes that Beatrice is having some sort of lurid affair with her best friend. No, and there's sort of really flimsy evidence for this, but he's in a sort of state where he can't switch off, and he can't. So it all culminates in this scene where he's drinking his whiskey and getting more and more out of his head, and he discovers these diaries of his wife, and he goes to the loo, and what happens? He goes to the toilet, to the bathroom, yes, with his iPhone, and he's completely drunk, and he ends up he has spy cams all around the house. That's the other thing. And his wife discovers them and is completely shocked, and I'm going to leave you, I can't stand it. And he takes the iPhone and drops it down the loo in a sort of drunken stupor, and ends up being taken to hospital, and then told off by one of the junior doctors for being completely, you know, like a binge drinker, alcoholic, and he's got to reform and mend his ways. And that the whole thing, and writing from his point of view, like stream of conscious, and I just took total liberties with my writing style. A lot of it was just, you know, off the wall, but I do like humor, and I don't know, I've had some good reviews on that book, but it hasn't. I just think it's so different that it's hard to market something like that.
Yeah.
And my publisher at the time struggled to, and then I struggled. I can see why they had a problem.
Have you made lots of author friends since you started writing?
Yeah, I've made loads of friends, and I feel, yes, that it's so. Yeah, I just mentioned one, Ian Skewis, who really helped me a lot when I was crowdfunding. I met him through Unbound. Carenza Jennings, I also met at Unbound, Martine McDonough, and they've all written brilliant books. And I just feel it's so good to be in touch and to be able sometimes to, you know, just have a bit of a moan and about what's going wrong. And I belong to a couple of writing groups, and it's one of the things that through lockdown everything seemed to just disappear. All normal life started to change, and having one of the writing, we'd just meet every 3 weeks. We started to meet more, and that was just a really lovely thing, because a totally different, you know, dynamic coming up through meeting on Zoom than on face-to-face. So it was lovely, and I really miss having the face-to-face meetings, and we'd all have like tea and cake and my friends, about one of her houses. But it's just nice on Zoom too. And we had our Zoom Christmas party last year, and it was, we're talking about having I've planned this real life thing down our local pub, so that would be good too. But it's that's definitely one of the positive things, that you can feel very much alone when you're working all day and you don't see anyone, and when you haven't got a book coming out and your publisher sort of either disappears or never talks to you or something like that. There's other authors, and who are in a similar situation, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet Ian at Bloody Scotland.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was funny. He introduced me. Sharon Bairden introduced me to him, and he didn't know who I was straight away. And then as soon as she mentioned my group, he's like, "Oh, it's you." I was like, "Yep, hi." But he was lovely. So yeah, it was nice to meet in person, and Sharon actually. So yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be much. I mean, going to some of these festivals, I feel like I'd love to do it, but then again, it's a little bit. I find, especially going to something for the first time, you don't know anyone, and I'm not very good recognizing faces. I think or even names. I'm probably better at faces, but I sort of feel I know people. Yeah, after a while, I'm fine, but just instantly recognizing someone, I'm pretty hopeless.
Trust me, you wouldn't be alone. Me and someone else went to Harrogate, and there's just authors everywhere. And we were like looking, thinking, is that someone? Do we know them? And honestly, we had no clue. Most of the weekend, we had no idea. And it was kind of embarrassing. And we said next year we would take a book with a photo of their face and their name. Because honestly, it was just insane. So trust me, you wouldn't be on your own.
I can Nate, because Stuart says, "Oh, no, why don't you say hello to that person?" And I was like, who is that? It's like someone who's lived down the road for 10 years. But usually I'm not that bad usually, but also I don't notice stuff, and Stuart will say, "Oh yeah, you noticed that their Range Rover or whatever has gone or come back, and I didn't even know they had a car." So
yeah. Have you had a lot of feedback from your readers?
Yes, I have. Whenever a book, I love getting that for all my books. I've had, with this latest book, I've only just started getting feedback, but I've had brilliant, just amazing reviews so far, and wonderful sort of comments from the first readers. I've had some incredibly annoying reviews where it's just the usual ones where they give no reason. They give you 2 stars or 1 star, enough, and no reason at all, or it's some you have to use bad language, or even just nothing. I'm much better at that. I hope. Well, it did take me a while. I try not to I try to be positive and not let anything ruin my day. So, and I'm not going to be looking at anything that's going to upset me. So I just try to brush it off. But when there's something, what is it? Yesterday, someone did something about this book, and it's something quite detailed, or say the most, getting someone say, "Oh yeah," I'm a little bit worried that someone will say, "Oh yes, well, there's something in this current book, Silence, that is totally unrealistic, and they would never do that, and you've got it all wrong." I'm sure they will. It'll be something, but it's I've never written an actual proper crime novel before, and I'd say this police procedure, it's been a massive learning curve. But it was I've had very I had when I did a lot of research on Russia and Russian mafia, and for my first book, Blindside, I've got the main character is, one of the main characters is Russian, and I had to do all this research, and I had this woman who was telling me who came back afterwards and said how much she enjoyed the book. She was rather worried about telling me anything because of, I guess, the topic was quite sensitive, and also I was writing about the civil war between Chechnya and Russia, and it was a really difficult topic to research, but it was great to get comments from readers. I can't remember what they were exactly, but but to me that is actually the best thing out of all of getting the book, all the long journey of getting a book published. And I don't, just feeling that some readers really appreciate it. And it's not even, I guess, the number of readers, it's just that some really do get what you've said. So.
Yeah, I'll be sharing mine on the 14th.
I shall wait. I shall wait.
I may post it on Goodreads before then, we shall see. But I've started it today, so it won't take me long to read it. So yes, then
it's a big book.
Yeah, I know. That's why I thought I better start it sooner. Although it doesn't take me long to read books, but I wanted to fully appreciate it. So yeah, so I've got ages. If you were able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend the day with?
Okay. Well, one of my favorite authors, I don't know much about him at all. I don't know if he's on the internet even, but Haruki Murakami. I love his writing, and I love the humor and the weirdness. I read a lot of all sorts of stuff and crime fiction too. So I guess, so having an insight into his world, and I have read must have read a few things about, which sound quite interesting, about his philosophy of life. But I can't remember very much about it. And also coming from being Japanese and the whole, living in Japan, what it's like, and the whole, how it's changed him, if at all. Well, yes, it must have done, and just the experience of his routine, what it's like having actually writing, how he researched those books, and his actual method and how he approaches writing.
Yeah, that's cool. And if you're able to travel to any period in history, any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you like to go?
Okay, maybe I don't think I'd like to go forwards. I really worry about AI and climate change and what's going to happen to us all. I'm quite interested in the Dark Ages, or in maybe not in Britain, but somewhere a little bit warmer. And just the time after the Romans left, maybe. Because because there was so little known about it, and I think it'd be quite interesting to find out what happened. But a lot of history just seemed like a rather gruesome, violent, and difficult, like just with our viewpoints now. So I don't know. So possibly I would revise that answer and go back to the 1920s to have just have a fun time, and where, not knowing, I guess you'd have to know what was going to happen with the 1930s, but maybe 1925 or something.
Yeah, it's a good choice, popular choice as well. So apart from walking your dog, what else do you like to do on Netflix in your spare time?
Well, Netflix is quite a big one. Yeah, I do read a lot. I've been, I guess at first I used to read more literary fiction, and I, like, for example, Helen Dunmore, and I write, I don't do much now, but I write poetry, when I have time, and she used to be a poet. And yeah, I like some of my favorite authors are, and you didn't ask this, so I better not say it.
You can
say about that. Can I say about that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah, Louise Beach, I love her writing. I've only read a couple of her books, but the Mountain in My Shoe and oh yeah, Call Me Stargirl. Love that book. And yeah, there's so many, like I quite like those books like where there's a hint of supernatural. For example, the Ice Twins, S.K. Tremaine, very scary. And
yep.
Michelle Paver, what was it called? Set in the Arctic, Dark Matter. And yeah, I guess I quite enjoy where there's a hint of more than a hint of menace. And with crime, I think it's quite difficult. I read recently, what's it called? It's gone out of my head now. It'll come back. Yeah, it's quite. I think it's quite difficult because you have to balance realism somehow. Like a lot of crime is realistic, and it's a bit weird if you have sort of surreal crime. I think you have to be extremely talented, I would say, to get away with it. But where you have a hint of supernatural, I think it can work really well. The Small Hand, Susan Hill, where it sort of goes into horror, and yeah, those are some of my favorite books. But I also like the sort of more gothic ones, and like the Roanoke Girls, Amy Engel, where there's a really strong sense of place. Yeah, so I find it hard sometimes to make the time to read, but often I just feel like I've got to. Social media is very time consuming. I do enjoy it some of the time, but in fact I love doing it some of the time, but it's when it gets to be a chore, like, oh, I better go on Twitter and do this, and so I try not to do it when I'm in that frame of mind. But it seems that there's always something one could be doing with social media, and so with that, then having the time to write, which I know when I do it, I do get obsessed and I can't stop, which is good. But I have to get into that momentum, and at first it's hard to get going and to get enough pages done every day. But often I just feel at the end of the day, I've got to do a bit of reading to actually immerse myself in something else. Yeah, and other hobbies, walking. Yeah, we've got a house in the mountains in southwest France in the Pyrenees, and there's some amazing mountain scenery. I've got lost a few times. I've taken friends on massive walks, and yeah, I've had it. Yeah, I actually once thought that helicopter was coming. I would have to call for a helicopter, and I phoned my husband, who was in England. I said, "Yes, please, can you?" I was actually panicking because one of my friends, had a few problems of balance, and we were deep in the woods up a mountain, had no idea where we were, and it was getting dark. Yeah, so, but I guess I like a little bit of danger, but that was too much. And in the end, we finally found the way down, fortunately. So I'd say, yeah, walking in slightly risky places, like up mountains and along above on cliffs and stuff. Yeah, I love that.
You said you liked watching crime dramas, so what sort of things do you watch?
I watched before, that was one of quite late in the day coming to all this stuff. Early on in the pandemic. And this is one of the things that me and my husband, we both like to watch. So it's one of the things we do. Line of Duty, I was really late coming to it. and one of my friends kept saying, "Oh, you've got to watch this, and it's so fantastic." And I had no clue what. No, I don't know. I was just reading, I guess, like watching other stuff. And then I finally got to watching it, and I was really carried away. So I watched 4 series in a row, and I think actually I was partly inspired by Line of Duty. Some of them, such as I guess the police corruption elements and the not knowing who you can trust in your fellow officers, and and there's a little bit of that in my book. Shetland, I've been watching the latest series. I like that. Partly, yeah, he's I think the Jimmy Perez character, very sympathetic, was not completely straightforward. Baptiste, so what's all about Happy Valley, like the police sergeant who was a detective, and she has I love all the family issues coming in, and very gritty, but you can't, you don't often get that sort of that drama, the intensity of the drama, which as well as the police side. Yeah, and I like some of them. Was it The Killing? That really, really long Scandi one that took forever. I think it's The Killing. Yeah, with a lot of politics. The Chestnut Man. I mean, just watched the end of that. Yeah. I have to be careful because I can easily just get carried away watching the TV crime dramas. I have no time to do anything else.
Yeah, I started watching You Don't Know Me on Sunday, and then I forgot to watch the second part on Monday, so I've got that to catch up on. But I've read the book, so I know what happens anyway. But I'm interested to see.
I've been meaning to read the book for about a year, so I'm going to read the book first.
It's incredible because it's so different, and I've interviewed Imran Mahmood because one of my good friends had read it and went on and on and on at me to get him for an interview, and he was absolutely lovely. So yeah, but yeah, it's so different, and it's one of my books of the year without question. So yeah. Definitely worth a read.
I'm looking forward to all these books I'm going to read when in a couple of weeks after the blog tour ends, and I don't feel I have to be saying things about my book all the time, even though it's enjoyable. It is, but it's this for me is like it is a totally new experience, and at first I thought, this will be fun. I got slightly worried, but I am enjoying it now after I made the last.
Yeah, I think mine's one of the last, isn't it? I don't think my day's the last day. I think there's a couple more after me, but yeah.
I think it's Friday, next or Thursday. Yeah, but I don't know. The reviews have been good, but I'm sure there'll be someone who really hates it and or doesn't like it, or just says something banal.
Judging by the reviews so far, I very much doubt that.
Well, we'll see. But I was thinking at one time I would be great because I did my local paper. There's an article. There was this weird headline. It said something about the headline was "It's easy to make crack cocaine." So the journalist was all talking and I just had such a laugh because it sounded like I was making crack in my kitchen, whereas I had been talking about, as other people making it and gang members. But as I did for The Girl in His Eyes, I was on Radio London, and it's the first radio interview I did with Jo Good, who is, I didn't know her very much at all, but I found out she was really well known for that. But she had this dog, and she would talk about, who recently died, but she would talk about her dog, and she was really well known for that. And she would do these very chatty interviews, and she was great. She put that I was really a bit tense, very nervous at the start, but but it was, she really, no, I felt really I wouldn't say at ease, but no, relatively, considering it was a live interview and there was like all the thousands of Radio London listeners. And I even read the very first poem I published. And right at the end of the interview. And I went out on such a high. And I was thinking, oh, it would be nice to do some TV or something. But I'm really glad. I just think, yeah, but I wouldn't be very good on TV, and probably radio is the best. Oh.
You'd be fabulous.
Yeah.
Are you working on anything at the moment, and do you know what you're going to do next?
I am. I've been trying really hard to keep writing going, and the 5th novel is, I guess I have this, I don't know why, but I can never write the same book twice or the same genre twice, but this is still, I think it's crime, but much more cozy, what they call sort of cozy crime, but it isn't, because I hate that term cozy, because it's like, oh, slippers and fireside and pipe, and that isn't me at all, because I want to do something that makes the reader, I don't know how to say it, but leaves an impression, an impact on the reader. And somehow, but it's set in a village, and there's during the pandemic, which is a risk for a start, because people I know it's like black and white. Lots of people say, oh no, I'd never read anything set during COVID, and anything that actually mentions COVID testing and masks, whatever. But it is to do with the extreme tensions that arise in a small village relating to the community effort to help each other during the pandemic, and to set up a sort of like a food bank, and they set up like a neighborhood response, like going to visit neighbors and delivering food and so on. But there's one rather hypocritical woman who ends up upsetting lots of people, and there's all sorts of tensions which to do with all the usual things of since Brexit, really, the usual Brexit type tensions in Britain about, different classes and races and people's views on immigration. All that comes to a head as well. So I just wanted to do something that's funny at times, but it also has a lot of darkness in it. And yeah, so it's an experiment at the moment. We'll see how it goes. So at least I feel I can cheer myself up, and then I can write this really dark stuff, and they let the characters rip and do all this stuff. Yeah, this stuff that I would never be able to do myself.
But I can't think of any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us.
I made all these notes. Might have been. I don't think there is. Oh, I did. Oh, yes. One thing I was worried that you might ask me is who would I get to play one of my characters? So, and I'm pretty useless at remembering names, but I think Aidan Turner, because I loved him in Poldark, and he could play, in a few years' time, he'll be middle-aged, exactly the right age. So a sort of moody, thoughtful, somewhat mysterious, a little bit that he can easily upset people, be extremely blunt, and that is a bit like Callum. So slightly gone to seed. He wouldn't be a sort of like a hunk, but quite attractive.
I could see that. I totally agree with that, actually. So yeah, that's a good choice.
Yeah, that's about, yeah, that's all.
Do you have a copy of your book to hold up, or?
Oh, I do.
You might as well show it off. And that's out now, isn't it? It was out yesterday.
Very thick. Yes, out yesterday.
And would you like to tell everyone where they can buy it from, and where they can find out more about you if they wish? Yes,
well, they can buy it from Amazon. I could give a link out, but you just have to look up Jennie Ensor Silenced. And it's also out on paperback, Waterstones and all the usual things, and it's on in bookshops. If people are in North London, Highgate Books, very, very pleased, but they've stocked 5 copies, put a copy in the window. Waterstones, not so pleased. Hampstead Waterstones, especially not pleased, but I don't know. I just think the manager, anyway, whatever happens, maybe they will change their policy, but Crouch and Waterstones has been quite good, and they've got a copy on the way, but I'm sure, you know, you can just go and ask them in any bookshop. Yes, and my publisher gave me these sample chapters, which I was reading at the Brixton Book Jam, and that was really good fun. But I realised there was so much noise in the interval that I just couldn't give out these chapters, and they gave the chapters because the paperback was late. Well, it wasn't even that late, but it was much later than they thought initially it would. And I'd been thinking, oh, I'd take a paperback along. And they gave these instead, so I could actually read from it and hold something up. And so I've got quite a few copies left. So now I feel I ought to be going around giving people copies. So I'm going to be going to my local schools in Haringey and pestering older children and asking, because the whole thing is set, it's a fictional estate, but it's set in Haringey, in the east of Haringey, around Tottenham, in some deprived areas. So I hope I don't get carted off by the police.
I'm sure you wouldn't. And where can people find out about you? Do you have a website or anything?
Yeah, my website is jennieensor.com. It's JNNIE. JNNIEENSOR.com. And I'm on Facebook and all over, Facebook page and Instagram, Twitter. I think that's it.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been fun.